Last night in Atlanta, what was supposed to be just another wild night at one of the city's hottest clubs turned into something way more intense. The place was packed wall to wall. Music thumped so hard the walls shook. Flashing lights swept across the room while drinks flowed non-stop. The who's who of Atlanta were in full attendance, dressed to the nines and vibing with the kind of energy you only see on nights that turn into stories. In the middle of that chaos, Kirk Frost and young Joc walked in. But they weren't just there to have fun. They had something on their minds. And it had everything to do with Lil Scrappy. Scrappy, known for always bringing the heat and lighting up a room, didn't seem to sense what was coming. It started off subtle, just looks, quiet words, but something was bubbling under the surface, and it didn't take long before the tension broke. What happened next flipped the whole mood. Shouts echoed over the music, and suddenly everyone's attention shifted to the center of the dance floor. Cameras were out, recording what felt like more than just a regular argument. It was real, it was personal, and it had the whole place buzzing. But what caused Kirk and Joc to step to Scrappy like that? What were they holding back until that exact moment? While most people were lost in the music and lights, the night was taking a different turn in the VIP section. Outside, the line to get in still wrapped around the block, full of people dying to be where the action was. Inside, the crowd was alive, dancing, drinking, and shouting over the beat. But up in VIP, things were off. Kirk and Joc sat in their booth, surrounded by their crews, drinks, and luxury. On the outside, everything looked smooth. Designer clothes, fancy bottles, and big smiles. But those smiles didn't feel real. Kirk's didn't quite reach his eyes. Joc laughed, but it didn't sound right. There was something brewing, and only a few could feel it. Across from them, Lil Scrappy was holding court in his own booth. Unlike Kirk and Joc, Scrappy was fully in the moment. Laughing, talking, moving like he owned the place. His energy was magnetic. People were drawn to him. Every few minutes, someone walked up to give him props. He wasn't trying too hard, but still managed to be the center of attention. Meanwhile, Kirk and Joc couldn't stop watching him. What started as quick glances soon became something else. They were talking low, seriously, and the mood around them changed. A waitress delivering drinks picked up on the vibe. She looked between the two, noticed Kirk's tight jaw and Joc's locked-in stare, and moved away fast. Scrappy didn't seem to notice. He kept laughing, moving toward the dance floor, greeting people, and raising his glass. Even if he did feel the eyes on him, he didn't let it show. Joc leaned toward Kirk, eyes fixed on Scrappy. "You seeing this?" he said over the bass. Kirk didn't answer right away. He kept watching, then nodded. "Yeah, I see it." There was history here. The three had been in the same circles for years. They'd shared the same rooms, shook the same hands, showed up at the same parties. On the outside, it all looked friendly, but behind that, there was tension. Scrappy's growing fame, his confidence, his influence, it didn't sit well with everyone. He walked into rooms like he owned them. And for Kirk and Joc, that rubbed the wrong way. The DJ changed the track, and the whole place seemed to jump. Lights flashed faster. The crowd moved tighter, and the club's energy hit a new level. That's when Kirk and Joc got up. No words. Just steady steps straight through the crowd toward Scrappy in his own zone, kept nodding at fans and raising his drink, but those around him saw what was coming. The mood shifted again. By the time Scrappy noticed, it was too late. Kirk and Joc were already there. Kirk stood a few feet back, hands in his pockets. Joc stepped in closer. The noise faded in that pocket of space. Everything slowed. Scrappy lowered his glass, grin fading, standing up straighter. "What's up, fellas?" he asked, trying to sound cool but clearly watching closely. His crew started to stir, some standing, others on alert. No one said anything, but it was clear something serious was happening. Kirk just stared at him, quiet for a beat, then said in a low voice, "You've been running your mouth. Stirring things up? You know what I'm talking about?" Scrappy tightened his grip on his glass. "I don't know what you mean," he replied. He said it steady, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. His crew behind him were paying full attention now, but nobody moved. This was Scrappy's moment to handle. "If you got something to say," Scrappy added, "say it." That's when Joc stepped up, closer, calm on the outside, but his face said otherwise. "We got plenty to say, and if you're smart, you'll listen." Scrappy didn't back down. If anything, he stood firmer. "Oh yeah? Like what?" he said, voice rising just a bit, one hand forming a loose fist at his side. The crowd nearby leaned in, waiting for what would happen next. Some people backed up. No one wanted to be in the way if things popped off. That corner of the club turned into something else. No music, no party, just tension so thick you could feel it in the air. Scrappy's team was on high alert, but they didn't jump in. Yet not unless they had to. Joc broke the silence. "You know exactly what this is about," he said, pointing at Scrappy. "You've been talking slick, spreading lies. Thought you could say whatever and not get checked?" Scrappy raised his chin. "If I've got something to say, I'll say it. But don't come at me with weak stuff unless you're holding real proof." Kirk stepped forward then, stone-faced. "We got more than just talk," he said. He pulled out his phone and held it up. The screen glowed, lighting Scrappy's face. Scrappy leaned in, squinting, but he didn't need to see the details. The fact that Kirk was ready with receipts said it all. His jaw clenched. "So, now you're pulling out messages? That's your big move?" he said, scoffing. "Man, miss me with that." But his voice didn't sound as strong anymore. He was still talking tough, but his stance had shifted slightly, just enough to show something had gotten to him. Joc stood right beside Kirk now. "This ain't out of context," he said, his voice lower, more serious. "You've been double talking, saying one thing to us, something else to everyone else." Then he leaned in closer. "It's time you come clean, before this gets uglier." Scrappy had had enough. He stood firm, squared his shoulders, and stared straight at the two men in front of him. "You think you can just walk in and try to intimidate me?" he said, his voice rising over the music. The nearby tables went quiet. People turned their heads. The music kept thumping, lights still flashing. But in that moment, all attention was locked on them. Kirk didn't flinch. He stayed calm, his voice steady but with an edge. "This isn't just about you," he said, leaning in. "Keep talking reckless and it won't just be you facing the heat. It'll affect everyone around you." Scrappy's fists clenched. He took a slow breath, trying to keep control. "If you've got something to say it now," he said in a low, firm tone. "I'm done playing." His crew silently moved closer, forming a tight line behind him. They didn't speak, but their message was clear. They had his back. Joc gave a small, mocking smile. "You already said too much," he replied. "We just want you to know, this isn't going away." Suddenly, Kirk stepped closer, his voice dropping just enough to be heard. "Keep running that mouth, and see what happens." Scrappy didn't back down. "You don't scare me. You never did." His voice didn't shake. Tension snapped tighter. Joc's fists balled up. Kirk's eyes narrowed. Scrappy's crew looked ready to throw down, but just then, a security guard stepped in, placing a firm hand on Kirk's shoulder. "That's enough," he said, his tone calm but firm. "Take it outside or sit down." Kirk held Scrappy's gaze for a moment longer, then backed off. Joc followed, rolling his shoulders but keeping his guard up. Scrappy finally let out a breath, loosening just a bit, though his eyes still burned with fire. The security guard pointed toward their booths. "I don't care who you are. This isn't the place." Kirk and Joc looked like they might argue, but Kirk just put his phone away. "We'll handle this later," he muttered. Joc gave Scrappy one last stare, then both of them disappeared into the crowd. Scrappy didn't move right away. His chest was still tight. One of his boys stepped beside him. "You good?" Scrappy blinked and nodded, trying to snap out of it. "Yeah." He picked up his drink, took a sip, and sat down. "They're all talk," he said quietly, but inside he knew this wasn't finished. Even though they were back in their booth, Kirk and Joc weren't relaxing. Their drinks sat, untouched, eyes scanning, not talking, just watching. Scrappy tried to brush it off. He leaned back, drink in hand, the usual smirk on his face, but his closest guys could see it. He was still on edge. They kept looking over at Kirk and Joc, too, the mood turning heavy like a storm hanging in the air. Then the whispers started. What had been a private clash became the hot topic in minutes. People were already exaggerating what they saw. One woman by the bar whispered to her friends, "They were about to throw punches, I swear." At the same time, a guy across the club laughed. "Scrappy shut them down. They didn't want the smoke." There hadn't been any hits thrown, but the gossip was already wild. Phones came out. Someone posted a shaky video, just a few seconds, showing Kirk and Joc confronting Scrappy. It didn't show much, but it didn't have to. The moment felt intense. Hashtags started trending. The club staff tried to keep things normal, but they knew the truth. This wasn't just a random argument. Their place was now the center of an online firestorm. Back in VIP, Kirk scrolled through comments, jaw tight. "They're acting like we started this," he said, voice tense. Joc glanced at his screen, shrugged. "It's just noise, but maybe we should set things straight." Kirk nodded slowly. "Yeah, time to handle it." Meanwhile, Scrappy's side was seeing the same. Reactions online. One of his crew showed him a post, laughing. "They're calling you a legend, man. King of the club." Scrappy gave a dry chuckle, but his eyes were still locked on the other booth. "Yeah, but we both know this isn't over." He took another sip, never looking away. "They're planning something." As the night came to a close, the vibe outside the club stayed just as charged. People gathered around the valet, still talking about what went down. The incident wasn't just a club fight anymore. It had become a story the whole city was buzzing about. Inside, Kirk and Joc finally stood. They hadn't touched their drinks or said much, but the energy between them was loaded. Kirk looked toward the door. "Let's go." Joc followed. No hesitation, no words, just a silent message. This wasn't done. Scrappy watched them leave, his jaw tight. "They think they can just walk out and come back later," he muttered. One of his guys leaned in, but Scrappy shook his head. His eyes stayed locked on the exit. "Nah, this isn't over." Outside, the cool night air didn't cool the tension. The crowd outside was buzzing. Phones lit up. People arguing about what really happened. Kirk and Joc moved through them like a wave parting water. They got in their car quietly, scrolling through the flood of posts. Some people online were praising Scrappy. Others wanted Kirk and Joc to respond with their side. Kirk stared at the screen. "You know what we gotta do," he said. Joc nodded. He didn't need to ask. They were already thinking the same thing. That club scene? That was just the opening act. The real drama was coming. Now the question is, what really happened? Are Kirk and Joc just misunderstood? Or is Scrappy being targeted in some behind-the-scenes move? Let us know what you think in the comments. Hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because trust me, this story's just getting started.